The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To Triversity Talk. I'm Wendy Stuart, and it's Wednesday with Wendy. I am so happy to have everybody here today. I hope you're all doing well. We are now into our election countdown, right? And feathers are ruffled everywhere. This is not an easy time. It's a crazy time. There are a lot of things on the table. I will just leave it at that. If you're watching the show, if you subscribe to Triversity, you know exactly what I mean by that. But I'm thrilled to have everyone here tonight. I had a really great day today. I interviewed someone this afternoon who was Adam from Batman and Robin, and doing everything that he can to rescue large breeds of dogs for 30 years, huge rescuer, and a line of non-GMO dog food. And I bring this up because this seems to be, for me, an animal day. That's right, absolutely an animal day, because my guest tonight also has involvement with animals. We do know that animals are absolutely healing. I do want to give a shout out to Rebel Stages, which is located in Delaware Water Gap, Pennsylvania. I know that sounds like over the hills and far away. It's actually not really. If you get on Route 80 coming out of New York, going through New Jersey, it's extremely accessible. I bring up this because I saw an absolutely fabulous show there, and Hedwig and the Angry Itch, with a cast that could have been on Broadway. It was that good, with a director that could have been on Broadway. You know, I support the arts, and we all do at Triversity as well. So please try and check it out. Okay, let's get on to our guest right here. I've first found out about this person from her wonderful agent who approached me, and I read the bio and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have her on the show. She has a love of horses, and I called this segment Equine Therapy, Confronting Obstacles and Changing Lives. She works in particular with women over 40, although if you know anything about equine therapy, can be used at any age because, as my guest will tell you, horses are absolutely magical. They can communicate in a way that people can't, all right? That involves trust and listening. Wow. So without further ado, please welcome Sue Willoughby.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction. I really appreciate it.
Because I'm so excited to have you. I love that you do what you do. How about that?
I love that you love what I do. Yeah, you know what I mean, right? Yeah.
I do know what you mean. And Sue did apologize before the show. She has her two dogs in the studio with her. She does not have the horse in there with her, but we could work on that for the future, couldn't we?
Sure. We can do the podcast from the barn next time. So yeah.
You know what? Nobody's done that podcast from the barn. I think that's a whole new show. So, Sue, a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
I am actually an East Coast gal. So I grew up in upstate New York, Binghamton, Triple Cities area.
You did not, because I went to school there.
SUNY Binghamton or SUNY upstate?
Yeah. Yes. Is that where you went? Wow.
No. I left New York probably when I was about 14. My mom and I moved to Connecticut. So we, still in New England, and I lived in the Hartford, New Haven area for another several years. And then I moved out to the Seattle area about a little over 30 years ago. And I kind of never looked back. I still have some amazing friends in Connecticut and Massachusetts. I was just out there last week, went to Provincetown for Women's Week. Oh my God.
Yes,
I'm gonna tell you.
there was a film that was playing there too. I can't remember the name of it because I had other friends who saw it. I don't know if you got to see that film, but I want to have them come on my show too. Small World,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Glad you were
Yes.
there for Women's Week. Cool.
So fun. So fun.
So,
yeah.
you've been living in the Seattle area. Obviously, it's your sweet spot. 30 years is a really long time. One of the things for me that stuck out in your bio, you came out at 17. Your mother was alcoholic. You went through trials and tribulations. How did you resolve a lot of that to actually become a coach? How did, there's been a lot between then and now.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that.
As we say.
Yeah. I mean, I always knew that I was, in air quotes, different and didn't kind of fit the girly mode. And I just, crushes on my elementary school teachers and all of that good stuff. Until I finally got to a point where I'm like, okay, I've got to do something about this. Now, at the time, back when I was 16, 17, that was in the 70s. And we didn't have, apps and all that kind of good stuff. No. I think I put an ad in like the local kind of, underground newspaper kind of thing where they had a,
No, were you in Binghamton then? Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually I was in Connecticut. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in Connecticut. So it was like the equivalent of, whatever local sort of alternative newspaper was at the time. And, that's kind of how I started. But then my actual first girlfriend I met in high school, and she was 2 years younger than me, and she had already had a relationship. Talk about an overachiever. So
I love that.
Yeah, it was just funny. And, and then I came out to my mom and, she's like, well, here's the thing. I'm a lesbian too. And I'm like, I knew that already because, my parents had split up when I was 12 and we spent every vacation and lots of other things with her. And once again, the air quotes, best friend, Jackie, and her kids. And I'm like, So
but it's interesting too, because back then it was not so common and now totally common. But I would think it certainly helps when you come out. We deal with teens at Triversity. I think it certainly helps when you come out to have your mom or your mom and dad on your side. You have that support.
Yeah. Yes. And I will put a caveat with that. When you're coming out and you're trying to make your way and be cool and figure out where you fit in, even in the, in the gay community, and your mother shows up at the bar that you work at or the bar that you hang out at, it all of a sudden becomes not so cool, right?
No, that's you know what? I've heard a lot of stories on here. I have not heard that one. Yeah, it's hard enough being a teenager, and there you are in a gay bar, and your mother shows up.
Oh my God. And yes, so there's that. But all things considered, it did make a very soft landing in the coming out aspect, right? So yeah, there's that.
Well, there's always that, and that forms who we are as people in later life. It's not a surprise to me that you probably help so many people now, and that would have originated from our own personal things that we go through, our personal growth and our personal pain at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, even though, like I said, once I realized that who I was and what I was doing, I still had a bunch of shit to deal with, so, I did grow up with my mom who was an alcoholic and, it had its challenges. And I also thought that, like when I was in high school, I was cool. I was the one, when I was 13, I had a fake ID. So I was drinking very early myself.
You were very cool, though, that you managed to get one at 13. I was growing up in New York and couldn't get one. So there you were. You would have been in Hartford at that point, and you managed to get a fake ID.
Well, it was back in the day, it was a little bit easier to do that. You could just send something in through the mail and they'd send you some laminated thing. I mean, it was so bogus, but at the because I'm tall, I'm like 5'10", right? I could always get away with that stuff because I looked older. All my friends were 18, 19. And, here I was, this kid that they were all hanging out with. Probably not appropriate, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Whatever.
But that's okay at the end of the day. So, you came out in high school and then went on to college. And how did you?
Actually didn't. I actually didn't go on. No, I didn't go on to college because I was way too immature. And I started working. I had like 3 jobs. I quit high school twice.
Okay.
So there you have it. Quit high school twice and got my GED ahead of the class that I would have graduated with. So I'm in 2 yearbooks, which is kind of funny. And then
hold on, that is really kind of funny.
First I was going to graduate early. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I quit high school. And then I went back in my senior year and I quit again because I found out that at the time I hated gym. I hated phys ed, anything that had to do with that. I was more into partying and having fun and drinking and whatever else.
So you didn't like the fact that they made you go to phys ed.
Right. So I wouldn't go. And they told me I needed like 4 credits in gym. And I'm like, that's it. I'm out of here. Bye. So off I went. Yeah.
Wow.
But I did get my GED. I mean, I just school and I never really got along. I was bored most of the time. My brain kind of works really fast, and I would just get bored.
That's the whole thing. I want to ask you about that because it's obvious to me talking to you. You're incredibly well spoken, and your brain works incredibly fast, and that is not something that comes from. Some things come from experience, but you still have to have the goods going in. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
Not everybody learns in the same way, and we hear that saying, "School's not for everyone." My daughter, I was lucky enough, I had one child I could send her to private school. And there were a lot of kids in that school that did not, they didn't go with the flow. They danced to their own drum. But with 6 kids in the class, they were catered to. Mm-hmm. And she went the whole way through. And when I hear what you're saying, often in a public school education, you better rise to the occasion or they kick your butt out, Obviously, you're highly intelligent person. You didn't want to do gym. My God, give me a break.
Yeah, it was just funny. And actually, when I was in high school, we did have an alternative program. So it was those kids that didn't fit into the mainstream. And I was one of those kids, not because we were stupid by any means. It was kind of the other way around. And we had like 4 advisors and 80 students. So, and we did cool stuff. Like we had like a Asian cooking class, and we went into New Haven and did, got ingredients from the international district. I mean, stuff like that. That was like, oh yeah, this is cool. We can do this. We love this stuff.
Well, that's a great way to learn too. If you're in that head,
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was fun. But I did actually go back to school and I got a degree in communication, web design, all of that kind of stuff sort of in the 90s. So I was in my early 30s at that time. But I was ready to learn at that point. And now I just can't learn enough. I mean, there's just so many things, like a giant sponge, sometimes too much.
You just said something that's really key. You were ready to learn. And I feel in society, we push people along, right? They have to hit these benchmarks and it's completely wrong. All right. Because what it results in is people with low self-esteem that think they're less than. They have a ton to bring to the party, but they have no idea how to bring it to the party. So there's a lot to be said about that. But lucky you that you were able to reset yourself in the right direction.
Yeah, I had that opportunity to I met a partner when we were in Connecticut and had the opportunity to move cross country to Seattle, and I took it. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It honestly changed my life. And, we're no longer together, but this person is my best friend and
Right.
my ultimate confidant and family member. But that move changed my life. And that's when I went back to school and took acting lessons and did stand-up comedy and learned to fly a plane and, all these things, opportunities. Here's the thing. I was now around people who were, I won't say more advanced or smarter or anything, but they were different than me and they brought me up and
they
they
brought you
challenged
up,
me.
and they were open. You were around people
Yeah.
that were open, and
Yeah.
all they could do was raise you up and give to you, which made you want to go for it, I'm sure.
Yeah. I
I
think
mean,
you have to be
flying a
around
plane, wait,
people.
I have to hear about, I'm into a lot of things, but flying a plane's not one of them. What was it about flying a plane that appealed to you?
Well, Wendy, I am one of those people that when an experience presents itself, if it's something that I'm remotely interested in, I'm always open to whatever comes up. I mean, if it's something stupid and dangerous, I'm not saying that I haven't done stupid and dangerous things, but I was given a trial flying lesson for my birthday one year, and I loved it so much. As soon as we landed, I'm like, where do I sign? Right? How do I get? So I started taking flying lessons. And then, of course, because I don't do anything small, when I finally got my pilot's license, I bought a plane, dumb, right?
Okay, that is really huge. You don't, right. It's like people do take flying lessons and they fly small planes. You went and bought a plane.
I did. I bought it with a couple of plane partners, and
I love
yeah,
that. You never, so you have to just, I've been in a lot of small planes because I go to remote parts of the world and do films and explore. So, but I have no desire to fly one of those planes or own one. So, you guys all bought, what did you get? Like a Cessna, like
Yeah.
six-seater?
It was a 4-seater. It was a Cessna 172, and her name was Doris because all of my things have names if they're cool, right? And
Doris.
she was Doris. She was, as one of my flight instructor friends said, she's Kelly Green and Cream. That was Bob. He was very.
I love it. I love it. So
Yeah, so he nicknamed her Doris.
you co-opted the plane with a few other friends.
Yeah.
That's actually a very smart, for people that like that, know.
Yep. Yeah, it does make a difference. It helps to, offset some of the costs because it's not a cheap hobby. I guess I don't have any cheap hobbies. I like horses and airplanes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
It
was fun.
More power to you. If you can live life large, live it as large as possible. So along the way on your journey, let's just say that you were doing stand-up comedy.
I did a little stint. I mean, it was something that I wanted to explore when I was taking some, acting lessons. And at that time, let me sort of preface this by saying, like, I was not that confident. I was not, but it was something that I wanted to explore. And I always have had a sense of humor that has gotten me through a lot of really rough spots in my life.
And yeah.
So people are like, oh, you should do stand up or whatever. Well, it's being humorous, right? Or being, in the moment. And I'm a little bit more of a premise type of a comedic entity. But I wanted to do the experience. So I took some stand-up classes, wrote some material. And of course, my mom came out to Seattle for, our little graduation performance. And, she was the one laughing the loudest, telling everybody that was sitting around her, that's my daughter. That's my daughter. I'm like, oh my God, it was funny. Yeah, it was quite entertaining. But I mean, it wasn't something that I wanted to do as a career. I do have friends who are stand-ups.
I am, but I roll it into podcasting and emceeing. I do not like being on that stage by myself at 1:00 in the morning. I won't do that anymore.
With a bunch of drunk people.
It's horrible. And when you're a woman, you get a low level of man often that says horrible things, or the audience in general is just drunk. I will never do that again. But I like emceeing drag shows. I love because the performers are all so they're amazing, and they're comedic too. You know what they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's an up thing. But you know what? You had to have confidence to do stand up. To me, it's the scariest thing in the world.
Oh,
So
yeah.
more power to you, you know?
Oh, yeah. There was a couple times, one time in particular when I was doing an open mic, and open mics are frightening. I mean, not just but because you're like sitting back in the pit, right? You get a number, they give you a number of where you are in the lineup, and God forbid you're first or last, right? So you kind of want to be in the middle, but you don't want to follow somebody that's really good. And so it's just a nerve-wracking experience, but it's interesting.
But the thing is that you did it, and again, for me, I've done a ton of things. That was probably the most scariest thing I've ever done in my life, and I was not over 9 months pregnant and late doing stand up at the comic strip in New York. And I thought, boy, this is a real level of low. Like, what if my water breaks and my daughter's born in a comedy club? And you know what I'm saying, Sue? Everything reeks of like cigarettes and old alcohol. Yeah. What a terrible thing. That was actually the last quote unquote legitimate stand up I did. Oh
my God.
But you can relate, right? You can totally relate to the experience.
Yeah. It reminds me of Ali Wong. She's done a couple of her shows, right? With the pregnant on stage, doing her Netflix specials or whatever. I'm like,
right.
Hey, girl, go for it.
She's great. So you also were acting at the time too.
Yeah. I mean, I just did little things. And like I said, it made me so nervous. Now I feel like, it all added to my current personality. And now I would love to, in some ways, go back to it and not have the angst that I did and the lack of self-confidence that I did.
Or the neurosis that goes with it,
Yeah. Well, and I think most you are in that world. I mean, a lot of performers are very insecure.
I am wearing the suit that fits me the best. I am insecure. I had one 9-to-5 job. I was insecure in that world. And I was telling my co-host this today, he went to a Halloween party. I said, nothing would turn me off more than a very straight Halloween party where the people weren't really cool, women with cat ears, you know what I'm saying? Not my jive.
Right.
Everything I'm doing now in my life, and I think we can connect on this, is exactly what I want to be doing. Mm-hmm. And I had to get to the point, as you did, where I was calling the shots for that, and you trip up along the way, you overcome the obstacles, as you know, and you have to get the confidence, but that also comes with age. We are probably same age or close in age, and I call it the I don't give a shit age. You just reach you reach a point where it's like all this stuff, and somebody's telling you some stuff that's just, you know what, you're stupid. What you're saying is like absolutely not true. Just stop talking at me. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that. What do they say? With age comes wisdom. Mm-hmm. But with age comes, the thing to turn around and say, no, that's a bunch of BS. I'm not going in that direction.
Right. I always say, well, my filter kind of slips, right? Or I don't have one anymore. And you feel comfortable enough in your skin that it doesn't matter what, you're not worried about what people are thinking about you, or, any judgments that they're going to pass, or you're thinking less about it. Let's put it that way. But you're also just like, who cares?
Exactly. But you know what? That makes you then, whatever you're doing now, that makes you the best you can possibly be at it. All right. Because you're grabbing the bull by the horns, you're jumping in, and you're putting 100% of yourself in there. And those thoughts that we had in our 30s and 40s, and forget about the ones in our 20s, the neuroses, the anxiety, the not worth it lists about you, it all goes out the window with age. Which brings me to my question. You said your Equus therapy is for women over 40. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, as a coach, like I wanted to be the kind of coach that I wish I had when I was younger, and I know a lot of people are in that same boat where, like you said, now we're at a certain age where I just turned 65, and which kind of shocks me. I'm like, what? What is that all about? But I think women get to a certain point in their age or their life where they still may feel those things that you were talking about, and they don't know how to get beyond that. Either they were all wrapped up in bringing up their kids or
Right.
their career or whatever, and that was their identity, and they may not have it anymore because the kids are all gone, or they've retired, or they're getting ready to retire, or they're just burnt out with whatever they're doing, but don't know how to start that new career or be an entrepreneur or just do something like start a podcast or do whatever it is that they want to do that's going to bring them joy and going to fill them up in a way that they have been putting on the back burner.
Right.
So yeah, I try and help them, and I'm one of these people that I've always done, like I said, flying or whatever it was that I was doing, learning to play polo last year.
Okay, I totally love that. Of course, you ride horses as well. Of course, you would learn to play polo.
I live 5 minutes from the polo club. I mean, how could I not, right?
No, it's meant to be. You have to be there.
So, but those are the things, and I've never had a problem with that. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way that I grew up with an alcoholic parent, being that my comfort zone was discomfort, meaning that I never knew what I was going to get, what I was going to walk into when I got home. Was I going to get picked up from school? How was I going to get picked up from school? Was I going to get home if I did get picked up from school? All of these uncertainties.
It was very unstable. It was uncertain and unstable.
Yeah. So that put me in a place of discomfort and also kind of made me fiercely independent. And in a way, when I say fiercely independent, also like very self-protective and not always trusting of other people and all of that. So that was my comfort zone, discomfort. Other people, we all create this space around us that isn't threatening. And so people or women of a certain age, they're like, you know what? I don't know what to do with myself. I don't want to fade into the background. I don't want to not live my life anymore or start doing crossword puzzles. Not that the crossword puzzles are great. Keep doing those things.
Crossword puzzles supposed to keep you nice and sharp.
Absolutely. So keep doing the crossword puzzles, but and they just don't know how to get beyond that. So I want to help them get over those fears, get over those perceived notions that their life is done or that they don't have a second half or a third half or a fourth half or whatever it is. It's kind of like that coach. I like to think of myself as like the second half coach, where the team comes in off the field at halftime and they're all like, oh, they're getting all beat up and they're, and they just like, oh, we can't go back out there. And it's my job to maybe do a little cussing and put them in their place and just be like, hey, come on. Just say, hey, you know what? You've got everything that you need. Look at all that stuff that you've done in the first half of your life or the first, whatever, 2/3 of your life. You have done so many amazing things. Give yourself some credit and give yourself some grace for what you've already accomplished, and then get the hell back out there and have fun.
Listen, I'm right there with you. Okay, but now I'm going to be devil's advocate.
Okay, go for it.
We are in a society that diminishes, like you're calling women of a certain age over 40. I think over 40, you're still considered vital. Let's go to over 50.
Over 50 for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Over 50 is when invisible starts.
Yep.
Okay. And part of what perpetuates that to me is our media out there. I get I read fashion magazines. I'm into reading them. I work with fashion clients as well. So I need to know this stuff, but I read a lot of stuff. I, want to know what's going on in the world of entertainment, movies, plays, whatever. We have this obsession in this country that it's sick actually with youth. And I used to say it was empowered by men a lot of the time. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel in the age of Instagram, it is often empowered by women. And I hate having to say that because I came up in the same time you did, where all this equality was happening. And my God, I'm a member of the Explorers Club. There were women that come to that club that are astronauts. Okay. All the stuff that the guys used to do. Women can be anything. That's how I grew up, empowered in that way. But I'm finding a thing now, and this election, okay, without getting political, and I can say anything I want on this show. I have met these women that I think are I call them the grab them by the pussy posse. I've talked about that because, my God, the fact that that's happening and they can still, cast their vote in that direction. I'm not telling anyone who to vote for, but how could you, knowing that with someone's background, as opposed to voting? We have a woman of color running for president, and whether you agree with her 100% or not, we have a woman there. Okay. And I just can't wrap my head around how women could get behind him and not get behind her. I'm struggling with it. That's all. And maybe you can answer that for me too, if we talk about, what happens to women over a certain age.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I don't understand that phenomenon as well either. And this is the second time that this particular male candidate has run against a woman for president, oddly enough.
Ironically, right?
Ironically, yeah. And so things are different now. I just feel like they are. And I don't know, like you said, I voted sticker on this.
I have mine. It was somewhere in my purse. I voted early too.
I did too. Yeah.
But it brings me back to what we were talking about, the fact that women of a certain age, and I'll say over 50, you are made to feel invisible. And I'm really out there, like, loud and blonde and, big. That's my personality. And it interests me that I'll be in situations now where I'm invisible. I went on a cruise to Alaska last year by myself. And I was smart enough to find the Friends of Dorothy group, right, when the gay cocktail hour, because my other friends who had been on that boat told me to do that. But it was, it was Holland America Line. It was families, it was couples or whatever. It was the first time I ever experienced people not wanting to have a conversation, not with my Friends of Dorothy people. I had dinner with those guys every night. They were fabulous. But anything else I tried to do on that boat, whether it was in the gym or nobody wanted to talk to me. I did notice the couples that were like in their 80s, wonderful couples, and they were well-traveled. They would say, come sit with us, have breakfast with us this morning, dear. But the other ones, I was just invisible. I've never experienced that before.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that is interesting. And sometimes I feel the same way. And I don't, I do a lot of stuff by myself these days, and I don't mind it. And I like to be sort of a fly on the wall, so I kind of don't mind the invisibility, but you're right. And I think that what I want to do is help women not feel invisible.
Yes.
And or to feel comfortable within that supposed invisibility, right? Where you can actually do stuff and, you're kind of flying under the radar, and
you can make a change. Good point. I never went anywhere unless I had like entourage with me, a bunch of their friends with me. Right. Yeah. And I got over that last year. A number of my friends were getting sick with different things. You get into that age group where stuff starts to happen. Or they were away or whatever. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to this party myself. And I thought to myself, well, Wendy, you interview people, right, on a podcast. It's not any different to walk into a party yourself. I have all my opening lines. Hi, how did you get here tonight? Or whatever. But that, Sue, I can tell you this honestly, it was a big leap for me, even at this stage, to go by myself. And I like it now. I enjoy it.
It is. It's hard. I mean, especially like if it's difficult, and especially if all of your friends are partnered or whatever, and and they have their friend groups or whatever, and somehow you kind of get out of the
loop.
Group. You get out of the loop and out of the group, and you're, and you maybe have one or two friends to hang out with. But I also moved out of a urban area in Seattle to a more suburban / rural areas
Well,
south
you
of
didn't have
Seattle.
the horse, so you
Yeah.
had to do what was best.
And I enjoy the slower pace and all of that, but I understand it. I mean, it is a little uncomfortable doing things by yourself, but once you can kind of get over that, um, and I tell my clients like, well, they're like, well, what is one thing I can do? And I'm like, well, what makes you feel uncomfortable? And a lot of times it's like going to a restaurant alone because
Biggie.
you feel like like table for one, like, and you just kind of go, oh shoot, right? And then people see it's sitting there and they're like, what's wrong with that person? Why are they alone? But here's the thing. I look over and there's a couple sitting at the table next to me and they're both on their phones. It's like, well, you might as well be sitting by yourself because
Well, that's a
you're not
very
talking to each other anyway.
observational point. That is the God's honest truth. And it's funny, I used that cruise to do the dining alone thing. I had the guys at night, so I knew I was covered. Big table. They all ordered fine wine too. So when I was doing my own thing during the day, it was practice for me. This is actually some of your clients could try this too. I forced myself. I would go in and sit by myself and not have a book with me and put my phone face down, talk to the waiter when he came over. If there was a seemingly friendly couple sitting near me, say hi to them. How are you? Are you enjoying yourself? You are someone that can empower people, right? I was on the cruise. I didn't have anyone to empower me. I had to empower myself.
Well, and I think we do have to empower ourselves, right? And give ourselves permission to do so.
Right.
So, I mean, like I said, when I went to a conference recently in Houston, I made it a point. I went out and walked around. I'd go to lunch or dinner by myself. And a lot of times I would talk to the person, my server, and I'm like, I kind of wanted to invite them to sit down with me because they were actually having a real conversation because they also are invisible.
Oh my God, that's so brilliant. That is like, you've got my mind going in a million directions now. There should be a book, Conversations with My Servers.
Right.
You just opened up a whole can of worms with me. You're so totally right. Yeah. It's the same thing.
Yeah, because they're invisible. I mean, they're there, they're friendly, they're engaging, they're whatever, but nobody ever asked them, how's your day going? I had this guy, I was having lunch and he's telling me about his son and how he'd worked at this place for, X amount of years. And, I got his whole life story pretty much, but I listened, I cared, he was seen and I know that he felt seen. And I think that is hugely important. Back to what you were saying about women feeling invisible.
Right.
We don't feel seen at a certain point unless we make ourselves seen.
That's the power.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do we do that? And it's just little things. It's just like being present. I mean, if you're standing in line, maybe you can initiate the conversation, like you said, and you're very outgoing and not everybody is, right? I think I interviewed somebody on my podcast who is the unapologetic introvert. And I loved that.
That's so good. That's so great. And I don't need to apologize for my introvertedness.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And it took her most of her life to realize that, and she's written a book now and she's starting a whole movement around that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's why I love podcasting. I love being a guest and meeting people. And I love having people on my show. It's such an intimate setting. And yet, we're hopefully reaching a lot more people beyond the mic and beyond.
Yeah, we are, because we're reaching all the listeners.
Yeah.
What I like about it is any of us can be anywhere, right? And kind of people that you meet, like all these things that you and I are talking about, this conversation would have never existed 10 years ago because we wouldn't have known each other.
Right. Yeah.
You're on one side of the country, I'm on the other. And that's what I love about it. There is a woman who was podcasting from an island in Sweden that I met during the pandemic. By the way, I started both of my podcasts during the pandemic. And I took a world that was completely shut down, and I'm extremely extroverted. You can only imagine what it did to me. It was like, WTF, what the hell? I always had a game plan. I'm a Capricorn, plan A, plan B, a million things going on. They freaking shut New York down. I'm like, is this serious? And then I was one of the first people to get COVID. So it was brutal. So you know what? We are forced to be resourceful. How do you bring the trust of a horse into this?
That's a great question. Horses are trusting by nature. The thing about horses that most people don't realize is that they are like 1,200-pound prey animals, right? People think of prey animals as something weak and, but they're not. And they're like, oh, horses are big and scary. But it's like, yeah, but they're prey animals and we are predators.
Yeah.
So when they're out in the wild, in herds, and even domesticated horses, every cell of their being is about survival. So they are the ultimate aware, mindful, aware, in the moment creatures, because their survival depends on it. Now, like I said, they're pretty well taken care of these days, but still, it's in their blood. So they're also herd animals. They travel in packs, and even when they're in separate stalls in a barn or in separate paddocks in a stable, they still are looking at the other members of their herd for communication,
In the stable,
for safety, for, hey, I got your back. Do you have my back? All of that kind of stuff, right? They're still very dependent on each other. And sometimes if a horse is extremely herd bound and you take it away from the other ones to go out on a trail ride or whatever, it's screaming and crying to the other ones that are back at the barn, like, oh my God, out here, help me. Like, really, stop it. You're really fucking an idiot, right? But so when we are in their presence, we are their herd.
Yeah.
So they are looking at us for leadership, because they will, if they're in a group, right, in their herd, they look to the horse that is the calmest, most level-headed, usually the mare, big surprise, one of the mares, as the, as the leader, as the herd leader. And they will defer to them. They will take care of them. And then they will follow their example. Now, for us, when we are with them, if it's me and a horse, they are looking to me for leadership, not, pushy, abusive leadership, right? Partnership.
Yeah.
And can I look to you? The horse is saying, can I look to you to keep me safe? And are you safe to be around? And will you put me in harm's way? So they're assessing you. They have various ways of, they can sense our heartbeat, our breathing, all of that kind of stuff. So this front that we put up to the world, and how we act and how we want people to see us, we walk into the arena with the horse, and the horse doesn't see any of that. They see what's really inside of us.
Right.
And if they sense a huge amount of incongruence, they will keep their distance, because they need to build that trust. They need to know that what they're seeing inside will eventually match the outside. So it's really interesting to, when I'm working with a client and they're in the arena with the horse is at liberty, meaning that it's not tethered to anything. It's just wandering around. It's just being a horse.
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask you to give first of all, this is so fascinating to give this scenario. So you're in an arena, the horse isn't tethered. He's walking. I would think your client is attempting to walk next to the horse.
Yeah. So I've given them a safety demo. This part of the horse kicks, this part of the horse can bite. This is how you approach the horse, right? So that they feel safe and comfortable in there. And then I've given them some examples of ways that they can interact with the horse. They can approach the horse, and how to approach the horse. And as they're approaching, what are they seeing? What are they getting back from the horse? So they will set an intention of something that they need support with, or that they want to work on during our session.
Cool. Right.
And then I kind of turn them loose and say, okay, go ahead and interact with the horse. And they may be trying to get the horse to move, and the horse just keeps facing off with them and like staring at them. Oh, your baby joined you.
Yeah, he likes the horse conversation.
Oh, I guess so. Yes. And then, I'm watching the horse, really, right? I'm watching the horse and I'm watching the client, and I'm getting immediate feedback from the horse that I can then turn to the client and say, what are you observing from the horse? And it's interesting to hear their interpretation. A lot of times they will project their own stuff
Wow.
onto Horsey. Horse is bored with me. I love that one. The horse doesn't like me. The horse is ignoring me. I'm like,
But
over
they're
the
putting
corner.
it all on the horse.
Mhm.
When the horse is just like
Being
there.
a horse, just being a horse.
Right, I was going to say that, just being a horse.
And I love that about them, right? And yeah, I've I've seen people just project all kinds of stuff on the horse, and the horse is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just being myself.
I'm
And
just hanging and being myself. What kinds
Yeah.
of breakthroughs have you had with clients with the horse?
Lots, all different kinds. So it depends on what the person is needing. And the horse will, if they go into a session saying that they need one thing, or their intention is whatever it is, like maybe they're going through a career change or whatever, I don't know. The intention that they start off with is very rarely what they end up working on, because when they get in there, the horse will kind of cut right to the chase and give me some really good feedback. So it allows me to ask a lot of really good coaching questions. Horses are great at testing boundaries.
Yeah.
So anybody that's having issues with boundaries and setting boundaries and not having clear boundaries with people in their lives, the horse is like, let me in there. I'm gonna get so close to you that, and a lot of, people are like, at first they think, oh, it's really sweet. The horse is kind of snuggling with me. And then the horse gets a little pushy and maybe, a little nibbly or whatever. Yeah. A little too aggressive snuggling.
Right.
And to get to the point where I can tell that the person's being annoyed. And I'm like, well, so what's going on there? I'm like, well, this horse is totally in my space. And what can you do to change that?
Wow.
Well, I don't know. Well, what would you do? I mean, does this ever, how does this translate into real life?
Into your life, yeah.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, I gotcha. Oh, I got it. And then they can be like, it's okay to set a boundary. And it's scary sometimes. And it can work the other way too. People that are having like attachment issues, the horse may be walking with them or paying attention to them. And then they kind of get to a point where, and I said, it's okay. You can send the horse away. Oh, but I don't want to. I don't want to hurt his feelings. Like, do you really?
Wow.
So they have problems letting go of things. Or
well, when you think of that, I immediately like friendships, right? Are they going to do that with a friendship with someone that's toxic, right?
Yeah.
You should let them go. Oh, but I don't want to hurt their. This is so brilliant, Sue. Do you now?
I wish I thought of it. I mean, I didn't originate it, but
I know. But you know what? There's not a ton of people that do this, and I love that people are listening and hearing about this. We only have a couple of minutes left. I don't know where the time went. Do you have a book, or how can people follow up? Because this is completely fascinating and something that people can absolutely use.
You can find me on Instagram, Sue_Willoughby on Instagram, or on my website, willoughbycoaching.com.
Right.
And there's lots of ways to connect with me there. And you can, schedule a call, or I've got a really cool 5-day email challenge where people can, kind of kickstart their midlife reset. So it's really good stuff.
So cool. And of course, people that are in your local area can actually have horse therapy.
Yes. And I frequently do retreats because I'm also a master facilitator. I do retreats periodically, and I can partner with people and, I can do retreats pretty much anywhere as long as I can, have a riding stable with or a place where there's horses and stuff. So, yeah.
Right. So you can do a retreat anywhere around the country. I'm glad that I'm hearing this because I come into all sorts of situations.
Yeah.
Again, there's not a ton of people that do what you do. I am so happy that you found your passion, and, look at how you're using it. If someone told you, what did they always say? If you knew then what you know now, if someone had told you that you would have been doing this for people, what would you have said? Did you ever envision it?
No, I used to make fun of self-help.
I love that.
No, I wouldn't have, but I wish that obviously hindsight's 2020, but I'm happy that I'm here now, and whatever changes I can do, however I can raise the vibration, I'm all good.
Well, you are raising the vibration. I always end my show by I love to take these computer pictures. So look at me and smile. Great. I collect these. It's just something
Awesome.
odd that I started doing it during the pandemic when I was performing in shows online, which was really bizarre, and leaving in the place of Venmo so people could tip me. Jesus Christ, the things we do. So you have been an absolutely informative, delightful guest. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.
And,
it's been a pleasure.
Please stay in touch. I do stay in touch with people. If you're doing anything in the tri-state area, let us know, so I can give a shout out about it. Okay.
Absolutely. I will. Thank you, Wendy.
All right. Thank you so much, and take care. And thank you everyone who tuned in tonight. Good night.